All right, Luan, the logins have slowed down. It looks like it's about time to get started, huh?
Definitely is. I want to kick this off. Are you like, well, first of all, everybody, welcome. Let me introduce Michael Kennedy, who's going to be doing today's webcast, Building Modern Websites in ASP.NET Web Forms. Michael?
Thank you, Luan. So my name is Michael Kennedy. I'm an instructor development mentor, and I'm happy that you guys decided to join us here today. We're going to talk about taking a technology that's been around for a really long time, since the dawn of .NET in 2001, ASP.NET Web Forms, and putting something of a modern view, a modern way to interact with it. Specifically, we're going to look at how do we really control the URL in a much more modern way. Kind of like you can see at the top up here. You see we've got this website where we don't have any query strings. We don't have a bunch of parameters being passed. We just have nice, clean URLs, which are great for users as well as great for search engines and the whole REST architecture in general. So that's the topic of this webcast. Now, you can contact either of us via Twitter. Llewellyn is at IsadoreUS, and I'm at mkennedy. If you'd like to talk about this webcast, tweet about it while it's going, you can use #EMScreencast. Okay. So let me tell you just a little bit about Developmentor, and we'll get straight to the material. So Developmentor has been doing training since 1993. We're one of the premier .NET training companies out there in the world, and our logo, our motto is developing people who develop software. All right, so like I said, just a little redundant, Michael Kennedy, and here's Llewellyn talking. Llewellyn is also an instructor Developmentor, and he teaches CDD for C# developers. I teach a bunch of classes. Yeah. Now, first thing for me to cover is how do we interact with each other? I think you guys have figured this out already, but if you're new to live meeting, your screen looks like this one listed here, more than it does like mine. It is a Q&A section, so you can just type whatever you want in the Q&A section, and Llewellyn will be monitoring that. Go ahead, Llewellyn.
The reason they want to do that is because we need everyone to mute their mics, because just as soon as you have a whole bunch of 30 people on the phone, sound starts to get really weird. So to mute your mic, you can just hit *6, and then if you communicate either through a Twitter or through the Q&A, I will respond to your questions and pass them on to Mike to make sure that everyone's taken care of.
Great. So we'll have a lot of frequent stopping points, and feel free to ask questions anytime. Llewellyn, stop me if there's any questions that come in. We'll talk about them. So you can do it through Q&A, or if you want to do it through Twitter, just do #DMScreencast, and that we're monitoring that hashtag, so we'll see that come by. All right. Now, the first thing I'd like to do is actually get you guys a little bit introduced to this, a couple of surveys we're going to do. So first one, I'd like to just learn a little bit of information about you, and at the end will be kind of a little bit of a test or a treasure hunt type thing. So if you guys could visit this web address, either one, they both go to the same place, either look at this with me.me/watch/OHC, or you can type the bit.ly, and I'll move my browser out of the way in just a second here. I know it's in the way. So what you'll end up is at this site. And what I'd like you to do is take this little quick background poll. I'd like to learn a little bit about everyone who is attending the presentation and just get a sense for what kind of experience you guys have so I can tailor some of my presentations to some of my demos to what you guys are used to. So come over here and just check out real quick what experience you have, and I'll go over and view the results here and watch them roll in. Okay, looks like it's about split right now. I got some guys doing MVC, and we got some guys doing traditional web form style. Both which have their pluses and minuses, which we're going to talk about. Whoops, there we go. Looks like a little bit more on the web form side. It's not surprising, right? Most sites are built that way. A little Silverlight. Give you guys just another minute. All right, now getting a lot of web forms coming in. A little PHP and Rails. A little bit of MVC. Yeah. Okay. So I can see that most of you guys are doing ASP.NET Web Forms. Some of you have some experience with ASP.NET MVC, and just one guy has done this routing trick that we're going to talk about. Okay. So let's go ahead and move on. I'll do one more refresh. All right, looks like you guys have pretty much voted. Great. We'll come back here. We'll look at the second one at the end to kind of let you guys try your skills out a little bit. So why do we care about this routing stuff? Let's talk about what ASP.NET Web Forms gives us and what is wrong with ASP.NET Web Forms. Why might we care about changing how this works? Excuse me. So there's three fundamental problems as far as I see it with regard to ASP.NET Web Forms. And the first one, it directly is addressed by this routing framework, in that we end up with these really ugly URLs. And maybe in the past that was okay. We might have something like this, like in this URL we got here. So we have peepvelocity.com is our server, and then we've got a web page list all the ASPX, and then a bunch of data we're sending to it. So this really ugly, gnarly looking user equals M Kennedy and P, we're kind of, what does P mean? I'm not sure, but whatever it is, its value is welcome to the city. All right. So this is not just kind of ugly, but it's actually bad for users and it's bad for search engines. You can see Google is frowning at us, and our user, he doesn't look very happy either. In modern day web applications, the URL is more than just a place that we link to. It's almost the command line. So much so that Firefox and Chrome, you just search right up here in this area. This is like the command line for the web these days. And when you have URLs that look like this, they're not very friendly. All right. We'll see another site that we're going to look at while we're here is...
Now, when you say Google is frowning at you, what does that mean?
Google is frowning at us because it's difficult for Google to look at this URL and put some semantics around it. It's difficult for Google to see, oh, this is talking about the posts on this website by Michael Kennedy, and specifically the one called Welcome to the City. Right?
And does that mean that it's not going to show up on Google, or that Google's just going to rate it lower?
That it's going to rate it lower, yeah. And it's difficult for the users because they've got to kind of go and understand your little USR and P and what these mean if they want to just type rather than try to navigate your website. So one example of a site that doesn't do this is this place called ubbuzz.com that actually created. And you can see we have a bunch of tags you can navigate over here. So if I care about, say, PDC was on here recently, I can go and look and go to just tag/PDC. And if I want to go to the third page and go that way, if I want to go skip to the page 30, there's page 30. This becomes the command line for our app almost if you have a really nice URL. Traditionally, web forms have not done that. So here's one of the main problems that we're going to address. There's two other problems that we might run into with ASP.NET Web Forms. The next one is testability. If you guys care about testing your web applications, especially from the unit testing perspective, you know that testing web forms is pretty difficult, okay? Bordering on impossible. Really, the only recourse you have is to implement this pattern called model view presenter and then test the presenter, but it's still pretty difficult. So there's another problem we might run into with web forms. And maybe a third one is you can run into code that looks like this. Here's a website that we're going to talk about later, but if you go and view the source of this website, it's just completely mangled with all the view state and other goo that comes out of ASP.NET Web Forms. So if you were a designer, say, you might just try to run away. Oh my gosh, this thing is completely a nightmare. How am I going to put a good CSS style or do jQuery type stuff on top of that? Right.
It's also rather difficult whenever you're in there and you're trying to debug something that's gone wrong on the JavaScript side.
Oh yeah, the JavaScript becomes really difficult. So that's definitely a problem. All right. So why do we care about routing? Largely because we want to be able to embrace the URI, let the user use the address bar as part of the command line for our apps. We want Google to be happy. So we want to be able to write code like the top one here, peepvelocity.com/post/mkennedy, welcome to the city, instead of this mangled stuff below. Now, traditionally, people have seen, when they're doing ASP.NET type stuff, said, well, okay, you can get these great URLs if you use what's called ASP.NET MVC, the new model view controller framework that they came out with. But as of .NET 3.5 Service Pack 1, they factored out that routing infrastructure into its own separate library, We'll see that we can use that in ASP.NET WebForms. So we might have an existing application. We want to make it look a little nicer, give people a better URL. And we can do that without fundamentally changing our app. We don't have to completely switch it to MVC. We can just put a little bit of a pretty face on it, if you will. So the whole thing that we're talking about here is about embracing the URI and REST-oriented principles. So we want to have a nice looking URL like that above, because that makes Google happy. It'll rank it can understand the semantics of the URL better, and it can factor that into its ranking and its keywords, as well as it's much better for users. Right. So we're going to see fundamentally what we do is we create these things called routes, and here's a little example. We're going to put code like this into our application. We have a route table, which they add, and we give it some name that's friendly to us, and we say new route, and then we say something like tag / and we put these little curlies. We basically punch holes into the URL. So PDC and for map to tag ID and page number. And those effectively show up still as query string parameters. We have to ask for them slightly differently, but they're essentially the same as the query string if we made some kind of ugly style URL, but we'll see that from a user perspective and from Google's perspective, it's a lot nicer. All right. Now, there's a bunch of good reasons to stay with WebForms. Right? You might think, well, WebForms, that's the oldest, been around for a long time. I just want to bail on that and go do ASP.NET MVC. And that's completely fine, too. But what would you be giving up? Right? Why might you just want to put this routing on top of WebForms and keep some of the benefits? So, for example, on the left here, you guys are probably all familiar with the huge list of controls that you can use in WebForms. Right? You drag and drop these things, set up events. We also have the script manager, all this, down at the bottom we have all this Ajax stuff, the UpdatePanel, the timers. We can use those in WebForms. We get automatic state management and persistence across PostFax with ViewState, as well as a nice way to do eventing and sort of figure out what we're posting back. So we have all these benefits in WebForms that we kind of have to do a little more manually in the MVC world. So there's some good reasons for sticking with WebForms, even if you don't like the URLs that necessarily come out. So we're going to see how you can keep these features and yet have a nice looking site. All right, so the first thing I want to do is a quick demo. And we're going to introduce this website that I built, just a little demo site called Velocity. So let's switch over to that. Now, here we go. I'll go ahead and run it, and we'll take a quick tour of what it looks like. So Velocity is the site where it's kind of like Twitter or any of these micro-blogging places where you can just say little short messages. All right. So I'll make an account real quick. I'll just say MK, something short to type, and log in. And here we are. We have a couple of features. Of course, it's got this kind of silly front end on it just to kind of make fun of the Web 2.0 stuff. But we have a couple of features. We can go to this page, or we can see the latest post by everybody, or we can list all the users of our site and then view their posts. And we also can go and view the RSS feeds of this same information. Right. So let's go here and say, here's the latest. All right. So here's a bunch of posts that everybody's made. I come in here and say, welcome to the ASP.NET WebForms webcast. We can add that post. You can post back and show up down here. Okay? So it's all fine, but if you look at the URL, list all, that's actually not so bad. But let's go and say, well, what if we want to list them by person? There are all the people who have said stuff. You can click on a name and view their posts. All right? Okay, so we can say list by person, question mark name equals M. Kennedy. Okay, so what are we listing is not clear. It's not that we're seeing the latest post or anything like that. So the URL is sort of this traditional style, not so wonderful, but standard ASP.NET WebForms. So our goal here is to take this and put a nice view on top of it with the routing framework. Now, there's a couple of things to do. Probably the right place to start would be this global ASAX file. So in order to use the routing framework, you basically have to go and register these routes explicitly tell the runtime if somebody requests this style of URL, map that to this page with these parameters and so on. Okay. And the first thing we have to do is have the right reference. This is not into regular ASP.NET. So you need system.web.routing. I already added a reference to that from before, but put that in there. And then you can go and access this thing called the route table. And system.web.routing. And on here we simply have this thing called routes. And routes is really just like a collection, sort of dictionary type thing. So we can say add, and it says, okay, what do you want to call it? We can give it a name. So we need to figure out what we want to do with our site. The first thing I would like to do is, there was this place called account.aspx page that would let us log in. And I don't like the way it looks. So I'd like to have something like account, maybe /account is manage your account, change your password and all that. So let's say begin. That seems like a nice, friendly URL that we could work with. So we'll call this account login. And let me just paste that here for a second. Then what I have to give it here is something called a route. Not surprisingly. And in the route, it takes something that implements an iRoute handler. In ASP.NET MVC, there are built-in classes that implement these routes. In WebForms, there are not. I should point out, by the way, that right now you're looking at Visual Studio 2010, so you might be thinking this is .NET 4. This is .NET 3.5. Our project is set to use .NET 3.5. Okay. And so this is something we got to fix. We've got to write a class that will let us implement this route. So first thing is we give it the URL, and I can just say it's /account begin. Here I have down here a placeholder for this called a custom route. Whoops, and we don't want to see any of that. Get that out of here. Okay, in our custom route, we basically need to implement one interface, right? It says what you're going to pass there is going to be an route handler, so no problem. Don't want to throw an exception. So what we need to do is we need to basically choose the web page that we're going to view, and we need to capture the data passed in. Remember we saw curly tag ID, curly page number. We need to pull that out of the route and then pass it to the page. So first, let's look at this request context here. And it has route data.values. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through each one of those, and we're going to stash that somewhere that the web form page can pull back out. Okay, so let's say iterate this, and I have ReSharper 5 data on here since data Visual Studio. So we'll go and put that in there. So this will iterate all the values, and these are like name value collections. And we can really stash this anywhere we want, but the place I think that makes the most sense is http context.current. And there's this place where you can kind of put information behind the scenes, and then it can be pulled out, and it's a place called items. So I'll say add something called value.key, value.value. Maybe it's not a great choice of variable names, but it'll do, right? So this goes through, and it basically pulls all those little, the value of those holes we punched into the URL and stuffs them away. The next thing we need to do is return the right page. So there's this thing called a build manager, and that's what ASP.NET uses to create web pages. So we can say create from the virtual path, and we can give it the path. This is going to be something we're going to have to pass into our class. So I'll just say a virtual path, like that, okay? And then the type is going to be a page. This returns an object, so we've got to say cast it as a page. So let's create a property real quick here. A type string. That is a data problem with ReSharper there. All right, create a constructor, and in our constructor we will say string path and hang on to that. Does that make sense to you guys? So we have something that will function as a route handler. We tell it the original, this is going to be the original ASP.NET web form page. And when ASP.NET routing infrastructure goes and asks this thing to basically create this route, we'll pull out the data, and then we'll pull out that, we'll say, okay, now go make the web form that is behind the scenes for this. So any questions out there?
No questions so far.
No questions? Just
Everybody following along?
If anybody has music going, please mute your mic. All right, so let's keep moving on. So the next thing to do is go back to our... sorry, guys. To go back to our... If someone out there has their mic muted, or their music going out there, please, how's that? Oh my gosh. Sorry about this, guys. Hopefully that will stop soon.
See if I can find a way to...
Yeah, we want to see what you can do there. Oh my gosh. All right, a little bit of soothing music to go with it. So, all right. Well, hopefully that doesn't go on much longer, you guys. So let's make our custom route here. Boy. I wonder where that's coming from. Sorry, everybody. Hold on just a second. I'm going to have to see if I can get, I'm going to come help us real quick. Just a second. Let me ask the person who set this up to come help us real quick. Okay. So hopefully she will come along and help us. And you guys can hear me. So let's just keep going. So what we need to do is we need to make our custom route class. Okay. Thanks, Mary. So we'll say new custom route, and that class is then public. Okay. Not custom made route. And what we have to pass in here is the actual URL of the backing ASP.NET page. So the easiest way to say that is go to the beginning of our web application. And this one about account login, it was, remember, account.asps. Okay? And actually, we need to register a fair number of these routes. So I've put this into a class where we can actually sort of stash it away. Otherwise, our whole global ASX will just be filled with this stuff. So I created this class called the Route Manager, and I added a function called Register Route. And it takes a route collection, which is simply this, just so that we can push this off to kind of a centralized place. So let's jump down here and say go to definition on that. Of course, it has no code yet. We'll just copy that code we wrote. And instead of route table, we will use route. Now we actually need a few more operations. So let's go ahead and look at those. We're going to need one that looks like latest. And latest is going to come from this list all. But I don't want to say list all. I just want to say latest. It looks a lot cleaner, a lot nicer to me. is what the page is called. So here we can just copy this and register a different route. So I'll call this latest post. Here, that's the web page that backs it, and then it's just latest. There's no parameters or anything like that. Another one we need is by person. So we want this page that will list everybody, and it's just, the web form page is list people. So this will, we can make up these URLs. So I think I'm going to have something like that, kind of it, like slash people. So, hi everyone. Those people. And the final one that we need is going to be when we're viewing a person. It says latest by person, name equals that. And I think I would rather see it like latest slash M. Kennedy, or Michael Kennedy, or no username. That looks a lot cleaner to me. We could put whatever we want, but I'm going to go with it. And this last one is interesting because it has data passed to it. Everything you've seen so far is just sort of redirecting away from the ASPX page to just like slash people. But this one here is going to be something more. So this will be latest slash, and then we have to put a little hole we want to punch in the URL, curly, and I'll say name. Right? So in our web form, we'll basically have what looks like a query string called name. Not exactly right, but almost. Thank you guys for fixing that out there. That was driving everybody crazy, I'm sure. Okay. So here we've got these routes that we've registered. And just because I wanted this demo to run both in the traditional way and then be able to magically just switch a button and change all the navigation, I probably wouldn't do this in a real site, but I have a little thing that, a little function that goes through and, given this, it figures out the ASP.NET web form or the routing style of URL. So this is not really necessary in regular apps, but because we're kind of trying to easily switch from one to the other, we're using that little bit of functionality we had to write. Now, we can cross our fingers and try to run this and see what we get. We should see things like when we log in, it'll go to the home page. The home page will realize we're not logged in, so it'll redirect us to the account page. And there may be one little spot where I have to fix that. Let me double check. There's a place down here that manages that. Is that it? Account, yes, slash. Okay, so let's go ahead and run that and see what we get. Oh, beautiful, look at that. Slash account, slash begin, goes to our ASP.NET web form account.aspx page. And we can create an account here, MK, or whatever we want. This is a regular post back that's happening here. So we'll do a response redirect to the home page. All right, and then here we are. Home page looks the same, but if we go to latest, you can see down at the bottom here, this latest by person will be people. So let's click on latest. There you go. Welcome to ASP.NET Web Forms. Oh, that's better. Something like that. And let's go and see the by person. Now, I may not have updated the page that we're going to go to after this. When I click on this, if I go find myself and click on MK, I guess push it over there, we might run into a problem. So, yeah. So I just need to go and fix that up here. Actually, that is not the problem we have. Now, there's a problem with one of the routes. It says you were looking for person slash Michael Kennedy, where in the route we said we want latest. Now we'll pull up all the routes. Okay, so that part did work. So let's go back and take this as a bit of a learning experience. What do you do when you end up with something like this and you think it should work? You're like, well, why in the world is this not matching? Or maybe it's matching the wrong route. There's a great little library you can use. I don't know if Scott Hanselman originally created it or if he was just using it in one of his presentations. But there's this thing called Route Debug. And you can basically turn this on and it will change how, it'll basically insert a module or a handler into your site that will intercept these and give you debugging information on the various URLs. So let's go and say route debug dot route debugger dot rewrite routes routes table dot routes rewrite routes for debugging. Okay. Let me wrap that around so you guys can see a little better. We just pass it the route. So if I do this, then you can all of a sudden start passing information to it. So I run here, and you should see a bunch of junk stuff. Okay, here's the various things that match /account /begin. There's a catch-all handler, and this one matched that. And let's see about, we had the one that was latest /Michael Kennedy, and we hit that one. And it says, look, you match this route, and I guess it's not showing the data pass through. Oh, no, yeah, okay. Perfect. So the name value that we punched into the URL, we got that set to be Michael Kennedy, didn't match any of these. So if you find it matching the wrong route, you would see which route it's matching, and it gives you a little bit of information why that is. Okay, so that's real handy. But what we see is we have a /latest instead of a /person. So let's go and fix that. That's down here in the register routes piece. Let me just double check. Am I going by person or latest? Let's just change this to, for now, person. Keep things simple. Should have everything. Once I turned off my, whoops, better turn that off. One more time. Back here. This looks like we understand what we needed to see. You can run it again. You guys are going to get all the source code as part of it. You'll get that library. So here we can say, show me all the people. Click on Kennedy. All right. There we go. So we've got our site pretty much turned over to use this new style. And let's look inside and see how is our page here. What was this? List by person.aspx. How is it actually getting this information out? Because it's not exactly the same as what you do in the traditional style. It's not actually a query string, but it's very, very close. So let's go to list by person. And here you see this is just a regular derived from page based on that WebForms class. And we have this function here, get path and name. Because remember I said I wanted this to run in both styles with and without wrapping, so I kind of need a little bit of indirection here to make that work. So it says, remember, we stashed our data into this http context.current.items and then just ask for it by name. Right? The value of the thing we put in curly braces was called name, so here we say name, and out it comes. All right. So that is how we integrate the routing framework into WebForms. There's a few things we'll have to do for deployment, depending on what kind of scenario we're deploying to, but it's pretty close. Llewellyn, we got any questions so far? Comments?
None so far. I think everyone's following.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, that's pretty straightforward. So we had to write this class, just to summarize, that implemented iRoute handler, pulled the data out, stashed them into location, and then just really delegated back to ASP.NET to create the pages. Global ASX, we registered our routes, and I turned my navigation manager to spit out route style information instead of older style. Now I want to do one more thing. So show you how we can kind of take advantage of the WebForms stuff. What I would like So I would like when I go here to the latest and I say something, I would like this thing to auto-refresh via Ajax. Right? Now, I could go use jQuery. I could go do some raw Ajax and write a little script web service call and all that. But because
Actually, before you do that, Michael.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
We do have one question from Thomas out there. He wants to know a little bit more about those deployment issues.
Oh, we're going to come to them. Don't worry. Let me make one more change to the site. Then the next thing we're going to talk about is how do we do it in .NET 4, which the answer is simpler, and then how do we deploy it. Great. Okay, so let me go and show you really quickly how we can fix that. So that's list all, remember, still this page over here. And
we have one other quick question before we go on to. When you had the name Michael Kennedy, can you go back to that page where it was still the latest Michael Kennedy?
So by person.
Now, when you look at it in the yellow, it says Michael and there's a nice space. But if you look at the URL, there's an underscore. What's going on with that?
That's right. So I could have just said Michael space Kennedy like this. And it also works, but you get the %20 up there. So my web app had to actually have some code in it to address that. So before, the page that listed this is by person. When it had to come up with its length, it said, oh, anywhere there's a space, put an underscore, and then the reverse had to happen on the page here that views it. It said if there's an underscore, turn it to a space. That's just a convention of my site. Yeah.
So it's not something that's default by the router. It's just something you added to make it a little bit more usable for everybody.
That's right, and Google likes it a little better too. If I had thought a little more advanced, I'd rather put a dash. It's sort of the convention these days. But I just mostly didn't want that %20, and so I did a little bit of extra work to hide that away and make the URL look a little cleaner. Yeah, good question. Okay, so last thing I want to look at real quick here is how do I make, I basically spit that HTML for all the latest posts just into this label. I dynamically generate it in the code line and spit it out. And I want to make this auto-refresh. Okay? So because this is an ASP.NET Web Forms, it's almost trivial to walk over here and do it. Go down to my Ajax land. Let's see, we'll go to the top and put if you guys done this before or not, but go put a script manager up here somewhere. See if it's in the right spot. Maybe. Script manager, here you are. Let's put you right here. All right, and then down here I can enclose this piece in an update in the update panel, and say this update panel has a content template. So that's all we need to do to basically make that stuff auto refresh. We want to make it refresh on a timer. Seems like a reasonable thing to do. You put this guy in here and say interval equals, let's say, every 5 seconds. So go back to this page. Let me go back to it in a different browser. Internet Explorer. So we'll view this in 2 browsers here. Log on is MK over here. And we're going to go to the latest. And you'll see that this auto refreshes. Can't really tell yet, but it will. This guy is going to be over here. He'll log on as brand new computer. Doesn't know much about that yet. So this is IE, his name. You can go see the latest. So, hey, okay. Okay, so he can post that, but over in my other browser, look at that, right in there. So these things that you really like about web forms, like really easy Ajax type stuff or some of these simple scenarios, still works even though it's slash latest or slash person slash mkennedy, that sort of stuff.
So you can get a lot of the value add of the routing without moving your entire site over to MVC.
Absolutely. The whole idea here is that you've already spent, a year working on a site, or you just would rather use update panels and web controls and you don't want to go learn MVC because you're happy with the way this works, you can still have really great REST-oriented, Google-friendly, user-friendly URLs using the shrouding framework. With what you saw is really
Or
not.
possibly, for political reasons, moving to MVC is just not an option.
Right, right. I mean, there's a lot of people who know their technology, they want to stick with it, and you don't want to have a battle at your company. Yeah, so this routing stuff is completely accessible to you. Yeah, thanks. Okay, so let's go back to the slides for just a moment, and then we're going to go back and we'll talk about the deployment issues. Okay. So we can see that we can easily enable things like /latest/3. And the keys to this were we had to implement we had to write a class which implemented iRoute handler. And you can see that we overrode, or really we just implemented the get HTTP handler, pulled the values out of the routes and created the page. And we had to register those with the route table, which is part of the system.web.routing piece. Okay, any more questions just specifically on that right now, Leon? We're going to go talk about the deployment in just a second.
I think we're ready for deployment.
All right. Now, before we talk about the 4.0 stuff, let me jump ahead a little bit. And let's talk about how do we deploy our routing, our web form apps which have routing enabled, to say it that way. So I can take this site, and let me go to my computer, INET-pub. I'm just going to just publish this whole thing, except for this one part right there, to my web root. Okay. So I can do it like this. I can right-click and say publish to a file location. I'll publish that here. So Visual Studio will publish that out there. Now we've got all our pieces. Let me actually do one more thing, I believe. Let me make one change. I kind of want to have this show up as an error down here.
I think we just lost your audio. Nickel. Nickel.
Sorry about that, everybody. Is everyone else still there? Did you drop out?
I think everyone else is still here. It was just you.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm not sure what happened there, guys. So here's what we get if we try to deploy one of these apps to a regular IS server without taking anything into account. So I'm running on Windows 7, which has IS 7.5. We try to go here, and it says that file didn't exist, buddy. So there's a couple of things we have to do. We have to implement a class here, which will basically go and cancel out or just ignore that checking that happens right there. So I got to have a public class which implements URL route handler. In order to do that, all we have to do to implement it is just go, do not verify anything. It's going to be okay. Let the request flow through and don't look on the file system for any problem we might have here. And then in order to tell the web server to start using that, I need to go in here into the system.webserver piece, into the HTTP handlers, and add this guy right here, let's say like this. So the name of that, full name of that class is this. It lives in this assembly. So I have to add this, and then I also have to add up to the top this line, this little modification to the module section and say, run all managed modules for all requests, even if it doesn't look like, say, an ASP.NET request. So if I do this and I republish it, fingers crossed, I should have got it all right. Okay, go back here. That one. This one. One where we had a file not found. Rerun it. And ta-da! Beautiful. We put this little handler in the web server to say, I know there's nothing here, but that's okay because the routing framework's going to redirect it to, or internally use something that does exist, and it's all good. Now that's for IIS7, right? All the configuration for IIS7 is done through web config files and XML config files. For the older servers, IIS6, you have to create what's called a wildcard mapping. And you just say, there's actually even a button for it in IIS6. You go to the, where is it? You go to home directory as in configure, and then you go, I believe there's just one of the tabs there, it just says add wildcard mapping. You just map everything to the ASP.NET handler. The same thing that is the configuration is mapped for .aspx files in your handlers, do the same thing for a wildcard mapping, and you get the same effect. Okay? Questions, comments? You guys? Tom, you happy with that?
They seem happy.
Being happy, wonderful. Okay, so now the last thing that I want to do is change this over to use .NET 4. So right now it's all running as, go away. Hold on. I'm not sure what it's doing. So this is the beta version of Visual Studio, because I wanted to show you the .NET 4 stuff. I might need to give it a little...
This is the 2010?
Yeah, there you go, this back. Okay. So here, the last thing we need to do is, instead of doing things like this, let's go to the route table, actually down here. So I can switch this to here. So you're now compiled against .NET 4. And that guy. Let it reload, and then go to this one. Jump around on it. Well, this one is .NET 4. Let it reload. Okay, I'll go down this section to our handler. And here.
After you deploy your routing to use the newer names, do the old links still work?
The old ones do still work, so good question. So here, if I go to like, let's say, localhost / Kennedy, oh yeah, maybe that doesn't work. Like this, okay, latest. So this was list all.aspx. Still works like a charm, right?
Nice.
Yeah. So if old links are still there, they would still work, and you could just start moving them into the navigation to maybe your menu system or something. All right. The last thing is we had to go create this custom route class, right? In .NET 4, let me comment this out so you guys can have both versions. In .NET 4. Paste it again. Oh, wrong one. Paste this again. Probably the last demo we got time for, and I'll let you guys do the quick little treasure hunt challenge thing. Is we no longer have to create this guy and do a lot of this stuff. We can just say .map page route. Takes a route name, so it's pretty much the same parameters. Then it takes a route URL, which is not this, it's just that piece. And then it takes a physical path. So you say that. Okay. So let me go fix that up really quick for the others. Okay, this.
So this just lets you take out a lot of the extra clutter there and see how things are actually moving.
Yep, and you don't have to write you don't have to write that one class. Because we could have called it one thing, somebody else could have called it some other thing. This way, everyone has the same basic way for all their pages, a little bit more uniform. And the last one. Really, you can imagine they pretty much just did the same thing you did internally. There. Okay. Run it again. It should completely work. Any trouble here? Let me just comment this out. This is some unrelated thing for now. About that. I guess .NET 4 doesn't have the site. There you go. Okay. So it should go slash account slash begin. Just same as before. Okay. See? Slash account slash begin. Should look exactly the same. With the exception of this one. So it'll go the latest. It'll still work. By person, however, this is going to be not so great. Because we randomly chose this place we could sort of hijack or stow away those pieces of data to pull back out on the other side. The .NET 4 doesn't do it that way. They got a slightly different thing. So where we're passing the value of, we looked by person. We have this thing called get passing name. Yeah, down a little bit. So let's comment that out. And we'll say name text equals, and now it's page dot route data. Things before values. So this is a built-in thing in .NET 4, but it's pretty much doing exactly what we did before. Check the string. Come back and try it one more time. Probably make me log in, but it should work. Let's see. There you go. So there's the .NET 4 version. That'll be out in a few months to make life a little bit simpler. Questions for anyone out there? Got anything for me?
Everyone's doing good. We're coming towards the top of the hour.
We are coming towards the top of the hour. So let's go back to the slides. And so the next thing we're going to do, actually the last thing we're going to do, besides just take whatever questions and comments that you guys have, is I'd like you to go back to that page we had before, to look at this .me /watch/OHC. You already got that up, that's good. And in here we have a WebForms versus MVC. So what I'd like you guys to do is go visit two websites that I created. The one that we looked at with .NET DevBug, and the one where this thing was originally hosted, and tell me which technology is used for .NET DevBug and which technology is used for Look at This Business. And I'll give you guys a big hint. You need to look at, you need to do a view source to tell, right? Because if you look at the URLs, watch/intro versus account/begin, they're identical. Okay. So you guys check that out, and remember, if you didn't have it, this is the URL. And while you're doing that, I'll pull up the location that has the results, so we can see what everybody says. Run through Poll Daddy, as I'm sure you saw. Looks like we got three responses already. So DevBug is MVC, got 2 votes for MVC and 1 vote for WebForms with no routing, 0 with routing. I'll give you guys 1 minute to make a decision here. Okay. And once you get signed, think up some questions for me, or any comments, or anything that you have. Just a shade color here. I got 2 for 2. 2 with routing, 2 with MVC. I got 3. So look at this with me. All right.
All right. You want to give us the answer?
I think that's enough. So let's look at the answer here. So .NET Dev Buzz. We go and look at this. Here's the trick. So we say view page source. I think something in this page jumps out at you as being kind of not raw HTML that a human would write. Right, view state. So anytime you see view state, you know ultimately underneath the covers it's still a WebForms app, even though it's /account/begin, and that's exactly what we did before. You guys are familiar with that. The other one.
The use of the word WebForms also, right?
Yeah, this uses so this is WebForms with routing. All right. The .NET Dev Buzz, this thing is exactly what we built today. It uses a lot of the techniques, although it technically also uses jQuery for some of these things, but mostly WebForms with routing. Yes. Now this one, on the other hand, is, look at this with me, view page source. You look at that URL, super nice and clean, no view state, none of that stuff, but a lot of JavaScript. You can bet that that one is MVC. So let me refresh this one more time, final answers. Looks like the crowdsourcing worked. That's the right answer. And this one, it was a tie, but the right answer is MVC. Okay? So unless you really dig into it, you would never know, right? It's up to you guys as a developer to decide, what do you care about? Do you care about, and jump back a few pages here, do you care about things like really clean HTML? And do you care about things like testability? If you do, then you probably want ASP.NET MVC. Do you care about all these controls and the easy Ajax stuff with UpdatePanel? Then you care about regular web forms. But either way, you probably would like to have URLs that look like this. So you guys saw how to do that today. Let me get the last thing. All right, really quick, let me just say that we at Development have classes on .NET 4 and ASP.NET and MVC and all that stuff. So if you guys are interested, get in touch with us. If you want to talk to either myself or Llewellyn, you can get in touch with us through Twitter. It's pretty much the easiest way. Also have a website, michaelckennedy.net.
And that's where we'll be posting a recap of that, today's webcast, right?
Yes, that's right. Thanks for posting a recap, which includes video and audio streams of what we did. So this is all being recorded, you may have seen. And we'll be putting that video up there. We'll put the code up there. I'll put the slides up there. And we'd also take questions and comments on that place as well. Okay, so now I'd like to just, let you guys ask.
And the website that you had there, michaelkennedy.net, does that have a C in it?
It has a C in it. And I know it sounds pretentious to say Michael C. Kennedy. I don't really like that, but you should try having a name Michael Kennedy and giving a domain. Right? There's like all these Irish politicians and stuff that have you. Some Irish politician in Northern Ireland has Michael Kennedy variation. So there you go. All right. Anything else you guys would like to talk about or hear about? Things that weren't totally clear? Either say something on Twitter.
And we are on the top of the hour, so we do need to close it up. But please get in contact with Michael if you have any further questions. And thank you, everybody, for showing up.
Thanks, guys. I'll stick around for a few minutes in case you decide you have questions. Hey, there's a Q&A up there, Lil.
So, just Thomas, wanting to say thank you. And thank you for everyone.
Oh, thanks, guys. Got another one. What do we got here? You're welcome. You're welcome. Thanks. Oh, yeah. We'll post that stuff on the website. We'll say something on Twitter. Well, and thanks for moderating for us. right, looks like there's no
I
more
think
questions.
that's
So I'll
everything.
stop the recording.